Okay, folks, thanks for tuning in. What we're going to look at today or do today is a seafood boil mix. This mix can be used for any type of seafood boil, whether it's sausage, shrimp, crab, whatever you like to use. Today, I'm going to do just corn, sausage, and some shrimp. But let's first talk about the ingredients, and then we'll talk about preparing the ingredients, how much we're going to use, and then actually do the boil and for the final outcome. Somewhat starting from left to right, we're going to use some Worcestershire sauce. My recommendation is Lea & Perrins. It's better. I was out of it. All they had was French's. Not as good. Next to that is Crystal hot sauce. It's a Louisiana product. I like it better than, say, Tabasco or Louisiana hot sauce or Reds because it's a full body flavored, not necessarily concentrated on how hot it is. We're going to have enough heat. We don't need to add any more. Next to that, this is something you don't have to use if you don't want to. It's the Zatarain's Shrimp and Crab Boil Concentrate, little liquid bottle of it. It's very, very spicy. I like mine a little extra spicy, so I'll use a little bit. But I'm telling you, maybe a half a teaspoon or teaspoon per 6-7 quarts of water. It's very powerful. Next to that, back in the back, I kind of like the Cajun Bayou Blend Seafood Boil. I actually got it at H-E-B. Use whatever your favorite is, but once again, I like that because it's a full body flavored. I found the Zatarain's Pro Boil and or regular boil to be good. It's good enough. I would use it in a pinch, but its focus really is more on heat than it is all around flavor profile. So I like to use that. Next to that is Old Bay seasoning. We'll use some of that. And then on the plate, what I did is took some fresh peeled garlic and just kind of crushed it a little bit. We're going to use that, 3 or 4 or 5 cloves. And again, as you'll see in the next portion of the video, the amount that you use here depends on how much water and seafood that you have. In front of the plate there, bay leaves, we're probably going to end up using, I'm going to do 6-7 quarts of water. So I'm probably going to use 3 or 4 bay leaves. And then, of course, never leave out the good stuff. I'm going to use a good half stick of butter. And again, as you'll see, that's given about 6-7 quarts of water. Okay, so we'll start with that. And then the next section of the video will showing me adding the ingredients to the water and the amounts per se. A lot of it is to taste, and we'll go from there. Thanks. Okay, folks, as I had mentioned, now we're going to add the ingredients. Keep in mind, just for reference, we're working with about 6-7 quarts of water, okay? This is the 1 pound bag of the seasoning. I just go by sight. I'm probably going to put a good quarter of that bag, if not half the bag, in that seasoning. So I'm going to go about right there. That's enough. I found for the most part, the more you put in, it doesn't necessarily give it any more flavor, probably just more salt. So we'll start with that. Worcestershire sauce. I just use the WAG method. I'm just going to put in, according to the water, probably, maybe 3 tablespoons of that. The Crystal hot sauce. Be the same with that. Maybe 2-3 tablespoons of that. Again, all this is to taste. The more you do it, the more you learn how much to put in. Old Bay, put in good 3 tablespoons of that also. Once again, the Zatarain's Shrimp and Crab Boil Concentrate. You don't have to use this. I just like it a little bit more spicy, so I put in just a little bit. I'd say a half a teaspoon at most. And interesting about that, I found out with that concentrated liquid, the more you put in, it actually gives it a little bit of a metallic taste, which is not good. So don't have to use a lot. Next, the bay leaves. That might be a white oak leaf. That's the biggest bay leaf I've ever seen. For 6-7 quarts of water, I'm probably going to use, that's huge, 3. And then also the crushed garlic. I'm going to put that in. And then I believe last is going to be our butter. And again, for 6-7 quarts of water, I put in a half stick of real butter. Do not use margarine. Do not use some type of butter with olive oil or canola oil. You don't need it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to mix that up, and then I'm going to bring that up to a boil, and then I'm going to simmer it, and I'm going to let it reduce by perhaps close to 1/3, not quite 1/3. But if you'll notice, it's about 3/4 to an inch from the rim of the pan or pot, and it's going to drop considerably because I'm going to let that simmer and let it reduce and intensify in flavor. And we'll be back from there. Then we'll look at the seafood that we're going to put in and how to do it. Be back in a minute. Okay, folks, as I had said, I was going to return once this mix starts to become a boil. I turned it down to a simmer, and I want to let this simmer, as you see, for at least, I want to say 15 minutes. I want it to reduce a little bit, but also you have the crushed garlic in there and you have the bay leaves, and I want to make sure that their flavors, oils, etc. are completely depleted into the mixture, so we have great flavor when we add our seafood. So what we'll do is I'm going to let this go probably about 15 minutes at least, and then I'll come back and we'll go to the next step when we add our choice of seafood. Okay, folks, welcome back. As I'd mentioned prior, we're going to add our seafood now. Look at the difference at the level of the boil mix. It's a good 2 inches down from the top. So we reduce this by at least 20%, if not 25%. It's going. And by the way, I can't stress enough to try whether you have natural gas or electric. You want to have the highest boiling temperature you can reach without boiling over, obviously, and spilling over before you add the seafood, especially shrimp, crab, etc., because we want to kind of flash boil that very quickly. So what I'm going to do, I have shrimp, not in the scene here, and I have some corn and some sausage. And I guess my best advice is the most dense product that you're going to put into the boil, put in first. Second, the lesser dense. Third, lesser even, which usually ends up being crab, shrimp, the seafood, because it only takes 1-2 minutes to cook at the right boil. Okay, so for now, I'm going to go ahead and just by hand here, I'm going to add in the corn. It will quiet the boil down a little bit. 3 pieces of corn given my 6-7 quarts of water. Going to add the sausage. I think I used like 3 links. And you notice the boil goes down. That's not so important with corn and sausage. But when it comes to your seafood, your crab, your shrimp, fish, whatever you want to put in it, it becomes more important because you want to really just royal boil that quickly for 1, 2, 3, probably no more than 2 minutes. So let's start with that. We're going to boil this a while. Actually, I don't know how long I'm going to do it. I'm probably going to give it a good 5 minutes. It's somewhat hard to overboil, but you can liquidate the heck out of it and it becomes mush, so you don't want to do that. So play it by taste, play it by touch, play it by ear. That's what you got to do, because it's so variable, because it depends on how much liquid you have and how much product you're putting into that liquid. So you live and learn with it per se. So trying to do the best I can, but I'm going to let this go. My guess is probably 5-6 minutes. And then I'll finish it off with the seafood. I'm only going to be using shrimp today. It could be crab, etc. And like I said, the rinsed off, drained, somewhat room temperature, thawed shrimp, it's going to take about 2 minutes. That's it. Okay? Hope that helps. Be back in a minute. Welcome back, folks. As you have noticed, look at the difference in the reduction. Actually, I was boiling the sausage and the corn, and I'm getting ready to take the corn out, but look at the 3-inch reduction in that 7-8 quart pot. But took out the sausage, as I said earlier in the previous segment. The most dense takes the longest, so I'm being very, very meticulous here. I think all's done. I'm just going to add the shrimp here in a minute, and take the corn out. I think it's done also. But notice the reduction, the boil point time for the density of the seafood you use. Sausage is done, corn's going to be done. Now we're going to flash boil, as I call it, the shrimp. So no problem with that. We'll be back in a minute. Okay guys, now that we took out the, I just took out the corn, the final part is putting in the shrimp. Look how much reduction versus volume that we had. That's all good news, intense flavor. So I'm going to go ahead and just add the shrimp. It's going to cool off here for a second, not very long, my guess is. And we'll probably boil this shrimp for only about 2 minutes. And speaking of that, what's really important, whether you have electric, gas, conduction, via flat top infrared, I should say, the important thing is with all this is to make sure right before you add your seafood or your product that it's really a roaring boil. Because as you noticed, excuse me, when you add so-called room temperature seafood or product, it still cools down. Hey folks, here's the final product. We got seafood boil mix. As I said in the beginning of the video, it's good for anything you want to do via seafood. I did some sausage, some corn, some shrimp, and that's all. So anyways, it went very well. However, this whole video and this whole lesson is to taste. So as you do it once, second time, third time, more and more and more, you learn more. So I think it'll work out good, but it's a good mix for anything that you do in seafood. However, once again, you always have to adjust your amounts and your levels of flavoring. Thanks for watching.